It's Barbie. What were our expectations, really? As your smart older sister, you know I can pick anything apart. Barbie isn't perfect. Short version of this discussion. Loved it. So, I was mostly trained in sociology as an undergraduate, and one of the things I always try to do before jumping into a discussion is to explain to the people listening to me that my views are colored by my particular circumstances. I think most of us try to be objective, and I think part of that is accepting that how we see the world is inevitably affected by how we grow up and interact with different institutions and the people who make them up. So, in relation to Barbie, this means that I have to be upfront about the fact that I have an unapologetic love for most Barbie products. When they started rolling out animated films in the early 2000s, I watched and got copies of every single one up to, I think, Barbie and the Diamond Castle. Did I ever go through a Barbie is problematic phase? Not really. Don't get me wrong. I understand the criticism of Barbie. But even as a child, when I knew that I wasn't growing up to be a tall, thin, blonde bombshell with sharply arched feet and no genitals, I had no issues playing with those dolls or watching those films. Loving Barbie did not give me body dysmorphia. I mean, shouldn't the feet have told you that Mattel wasn't depicting realistic women? It's the same way that watching anime did not make me wish that my eyes took up half my face. I walked around in Barbie pink, what kids today would call Barbie core, for a full 2 years in university. Anyone who knew me then and now would cut off their tongues before they called me vapid. And that's including the haters and the people I've actually wronged. Loving Barbie did not stop me from hitting personal and professional goals. And even when I've struggled, I've never turned to my Barbie and said, oh, well, my hatred of the pinch test is because of you. To say I was excited about a Barbie movie starring Margot Robbie is a massive understatement. I went into the Barbie film screening without any idea about what to expect other than what I've already gathered from the trailer. Barbie and Ken stumble into the real world, hijinks ensue. I was vaguely aware of the noise around the film, but I wanted to go in without half-formed opinions culled from other viewers. Work has been crazy, so I only got to see the film recently, and short version of this discussion, loved it. Unsurprisingly, but give me a chance to defend myself and my opinion. To be clear, it isn't perfect. As your smart older sister, you know I can pick anything apart with grim, ruthless satisfaction, especially things I love. As my family, friends, coworkers, bosses, students, and random people will tell you, criticism is my love language. It's one of the fantastic things about being a Virgo rising. Perfection isn't perfection until I proclaim it so. And again, Barbie isn't perfect, but it's worth a watch, and as incoherent as it is in parts, I came away with a vague sense of what it was saying. And I agreed with it. Before we get into a discussion of the film's merits and the noise that preceded the film, I do want to give you a quick rundown of what happened in this movie. If you haven't seen the film, I strongly suggest you find a way to see it before you watch this video. If you don't care about spoilers, or if you're one of those people who prefer to have a loose sketch of the plot before you see something, then this segment is for you. But for everyone else, explicit spoiler warnings here. So we open with Barbie Land. Everything's great, women are on top, every day is the perfect day. There are different Barbies, all based on dolls that Mattel actually released, I think. And they're named based on their functions. So we have Dr. Barbie, Writer Barbie, President Barbie, so on. All the Kens look like they're different Kens, but the one thing they have in common is that they appear to exist as complementary to the Barbies. Margot Robbie plays stereotypical Barbie paired with stereotypical Ken, played by Ryan Gosling, whose job is, and I quote, beach. Stereotypical Ken, whom I'll just call Ryan from this point on so that it's easier to keep track, is deeply in love with stereotypical Barbie, Margot for our purposes, because he was created specifically to be her boyfriend, or so he believes, and he's all about stereotypical Barbie. She seems just okay with him, but it's made clear that they're on different levels emotionally. In one scene, Ryan says that he wants to spend the evening with Margot, but she ditches him because it's girls' night. And then we learn that every night is girls' night. So while everything is perfect for all the Barbies in Barbie Land, it's made clear that things are a bit different for the Kens. All the Barbies think that everything in Barbie Land is perfect because they've made it so in the real world. Their understanding of the universe is that Barbie Land reflects the real world and vice versa. When Margot starts randomly having thoughts of death, her arched feet become flat and she sees cellulite on her thighs, she goes to see Weird Barbie, whose Barbie backstory I won't get into because it's not as funny when explained. And Weird Barbie tells her that her perfect Barbie Land life is on the fritz because of the way the child who owns her doll is engaging with it. Again, Barbie Land is supposedly a reflection of the real world, so whatever experience your doll is having in RL will affect your Barbie Land life. To save herself, Margot has to travel into the real world to fix the child's problems. Margot does that, reluctantly bringing her committed Ryan along for the trip. It does not go well, to put it mildly, and while Margot does find the child, angsty teenager Sasha, she's also separated from Ryan and draws the attention of the FBI, who inform Mattel that one of their dolls has once again traveled into the real world. Mattel chases Margot down, but she's rescued by Sasha and her mother Gloria. Gloria works at Mattel, and it is revealed that she was also playing with Sasha's dolls, and it's her thoughts and feelings that have been affecting Margot's Barbie Land life. Meanwhile, Ryan discovers what the real world is like, i.e., men are generally dominant over women in most things, and is exposed to hyper-masculine culture, which he absorbs and decides to import to Barbie Land. He returns to Barbie Land without Margot, eager to share his discoveries with the other Kens. In order to escape Mattel, Margot, Gloria, and Sasha return to Barbie Land to find that the Kens have taken over, and all the Barbies have become subservient to the Kens. Ryan throws Margot out of her Barbie dream house because she refuses to be subservient to him, and Margot decides that's it, she gives up. Gloria is not having any of this, having just left a male-dominant world in order to experience a female-led one. So she gives Margot and a few other Barbies a rant/pep talk about how impossible it is to be a woman. The Barbie holdouts realize that Gloria's speech breaks the hold of patriarchy over the ensnared Barbies, and they begin kidnapping and emancipating Barbies little by little. That's really what happens. The stakes are high because the Kens plan to formalize their takeover by changing the Barbie Land Constitution in a special election. Shortly before the vote, with all the Barbies secretly freed from patriarchy, they enact the final phase of their plan, turning the Kens against one another. I won't spoil this part because for me it was the funniest part of the film, but they succeed and the Barbies regain control of Barbie Land. In the aftermath of the Barbie restoration, stereotypical Ken and Barbie, yes, Ryan and Margot, let's go back to calling them their character names, reconcile and both decide to continue their journeys of self-discovery. An important figure in Mattel drops a bunch of revelations and Barbie decides to live in the real world. And that's the end of the film. So it's been a minute since Barbie was released, and despite all the naysayers, the film made over $1 billion in the worldwide box office. So I think it's fair to say that whatever its failings, this film worked. I found it very funny and entertaining, and that is considering the logical leaps, the fact that my disbelief was not quite suspended, and the general incoherence about what it was trying to say beyond, we love feminism. I adore Margot Robbie. Not only is she perfect casting for stereotypical Barbie, I do think she was able to convey all the depths of a stereotypical Barbie having a breakdown when she realizes that she and the world aren't perfect. One of my favorite scenes in the entire film is when she's told that she needs to go on this whole journey into the real world to set things right, and she so clearly does not want to do it. I won't break down the scene for those who somehow have not yet seen it, but it was very funny. I do think it's the most honest reaction I've seen in a while to suddenly having a quest thrust upon a person. You know how it is, especially if you play role playing games or you've seen fantasy films. The hero is forced to go on the hero's journey by terrible circumstances beyond their control. And most of the time, they don't really have a choice. And even when they do, their innate nobility compels them to take it up. In this film, the stakes affect only one doll, and so far as she knows, the worst that could happen is that she turns into Weird Barbie 2.0 and has to live with flat feet and cellulite. Her initial, but do I have to, reaction was incredibly relatable to me. And that's basically me, 6 days a week, when I have to lace up and head to the gym to be mauled by my psychotic trainer. Is that the most flattering stereotype of women, that we'll suit up and head out because we cannot have perfect lives with cellulite and flat feet? No, but it's honest. I mean, the intensity that many women will endure for what they consider to be perfect could supply an endless stream of content. This is why I think the film works. Outside of its humor, bubblegum aesthetic, and fantastic performances from the cast, it's honest about a woman's lived experience in a way that crosses cultures, ethnicities, and class. One of the biggest markets the film made bank in was China, where the feminist movement is, to put it mildly, still constrained by deeply entrenched cultural and political norms. It isn't a combative, searing manifesto. It's a glorious cacophony that manages to come across in just the right way to women who are still waiting and wanting to feel seen. And it isn't just women that this film is appealing to or acknowledging. When I saw Barbie in the theater, a good chunk of the audience were young men who, from their loud, disruptive laughter, seemed to be having a really good time, particularly when Ryan Gosling was on screen. Now, a word about Ryan Gosling, the foil to Margot's stereotypical Barbie. I will admit I was in the camp that was concerned when he was cast just because he isn't quite as fit and angular as I imagined Ken being. In my mind, Ken is always going to be a young David Hasselhoff. But having seen the film, I kind of get why they cast Ryan Gosling. He is funny, and he did manage to convey the character arc Ken was given in this film. Speaking of Ken, that brings us neatly to the main reason I was inspired to make this video. As someone with multiple circles of friends who is on speaking terms with all of my relatives, it was inevitable that I'd pick up the angry vibrations from the conservatives who think that 2023's Barbie is about hating and demeaning men and pushing girl power at the cost of men. I dulled out most of their words before I saw the film, as mentioned, but I still got that resentful hum here and there. Having seen the film, I now wonder, what are you all so mad about? Did we watch the same movie? Unsurprisingly, the angriest moaners are people who haven't seen the film.
This movie is not just a piece of This movie is a flaming piece of dog piled atop an entire dumpster.
They're just mad at the concept of an unabashedly pro-woman film. Nothing anyone will say will ever convince them otherwise. So, as we do with most losers like that, we just shrug and agree to disagree. Now, what about the men who did see the film and did feel disrespected, demeaned, dismissed, disliked, just generally dissed? I do understand why you might feel that way. I do understand why you might feel that they're making fun of parts of masculinity that you actually like, or how you might feel that it's unfair that they make traditional masculinity out to be dumb, cringe, and awkward, and why you might think that the film is saying that most men are not smart, because stereotypical Ken is not smart. I get that if you identified with stereotypical Ken, or any of the Kens, even in the smallest way, you might be put off by how much they're made fun of. Or you could be really offended because you think that the Kens are not accurate or fair portrayals of men. I understand that there's no controlling a gut, visceral dislike of something, so if you're vehemently angry with the film, perhaps this segment, or this video for that matter, is not for you. But if you're in a place where you're mad but willing to listen, here's what I'm inviting you to consider. Stereotypical Ken is an honest depiction of a lot of men's lived experience, and the film is sympathetic to that experience. Hear me out. Okay, not everyone looks like Ryan Gosling. Not everyone has managed, even briefly, to acquire a Casa Mojo Dojo house, or had the joy of having a job that is simply beach. But what Ken goes through in this film is very true of a lot of modern men's experiences, especially men millennial and younger, at least from a personal observation, actual studies done. The film acknowledges through Ken that a lot of men aren't happy. They're also searching for meaning and purpose in today's world. Yes, the world still isn't great for women, but it also isn't fantastic for men. Women are doing better than they have historically, but men are struggling. Let's take a look at relatively recent studies. In 2013, a small study in the United Kingdom found that men without children were more depressed, sad, and angry than their female counterparts. In fact, subsequent studies showed over the years that unmarried, childless women were the happiest subgroup in the population, found to be healthier, happier, and more likely to outlive their married, child-rearing counterparts. Studies in the last decade, the most recent I saw being done last year, have shown that men are more likely to be single and unhappy about it, with some attributing it to a rise in standards for what constitutes a healthy relationship. Women have been found more likely to seek divorce because it's not enough these days for men to just be adequate providers. Most women are also employed and are no longer constrained for economic reasons to stay when they're unhappy. So, what can we sketch from these findings? I think it's fair to state that many women have benefited from the change in gender dynamics that has taken place over the last 100 years or so. 100 years ago, in my country, I'd probably have been married off advantageously at 15 instead of enrolled at university. It's true that even now, even as recently as last month, I was praised by a mentor for being incredibly measured, well-informed, and rational for a woman. So we haven't eradicated the patriarchy yet, ladies. However, you would be completely off your rocker if you argued that the circumstances of women in general have not improved, particularly in the West. Has that come at a cost? Yes, in the sense that it displaced the old order that was familiar and overall favorable to men. It isn't unfeminist to acknowledge that. Now, the old order was unfavorable to men in many ways, so you might argue that men should also welcome the changes, and indeed, I think in some ways, some men do welcome the empowerment of women. But I think you could understand why even when a system doesn't work for you, you would choose it because it's the devil you know. In 1897, French sociologist Émile Durkheim published a book succinctly titled Unaliving. This book is notable for many reasons, but I think for many sociologists, this is why he's considered one of the fathers of this field. He took what is ostensibly a deeply personal individual act and through his study characterized it in many ways as a social phenomenon. He differentiated types of unaliving, and for one category in particular, he returned to the concept of anomie, which he first discussed in 1893. So what is anomie? Even if you haven't studied sociology, I think you can understand and accept the proposition that all individuals are, to some degree, products of the society that they live in. As you live and grow, you learn how to speak, how to behave, how to tell right from wrong, and what you should strive for. These are norms, rules that help you understand and exist in the world. Even the most rugged individualists of the modern world did not have endemic knowledge about how to build a cabin in the woods and set up a security system designed to keep other people out. We were not born just knowing how to speak English or to crave bacon and eggs in the morning. Anomie is the effect of those norms breaking down in such a way that people can no longer make sense of the world they live in. Durkheim's examples were centered on revolutions, whenever there's an upheaval in class and more specifically, working conditions. In such situations of anomie, he observed an increase in the number of unalivings that he attributed to the psychological pain that results from the emptiness and futility of not understanding what one is supposed to be doing. Later sociologists, like the American Robert Merton, expand on the concept of anomie. Notably, Merton argued that anomie is more specifically caused not just by social upheaval, but by the fact that when massive change takes place, certain rules just cannot apply anymore. His basic premise is that every society puts a premium on certain goals, as well as acceptable means for reaching those goals. When the means for reaching those goals, i.e., the rules you have to follow to claim your prize, do not actually make it possible to win, the result is anomie. At minimum, you're pissed off and frustrated. In the extreme, you're so angry or broken by the injustice of the discrepancy that you lash out at others or yourself. We can understand this on a very basic level, right? Even if you haven't read Durkheim or Merton or other sociologists, you understand what they're saying, right? If you don't know or understand the rules, you can't play the game. Even if you do play, you can't play well and you're not going to have fun. Now, if you learn the rules and then play, and then halfway through the game you realize that the rules aren't being followed, or that there's another set of rules that you didn't learn, how would you feel? Let's tie this all back to Ken and what he, in my opinion, embodies. In today's world, when it comes to the question of what it means to be a man, more so a good man and a desirable man who will have a good life, I've observed a fair number of men who are, to put it mildly, flailing at life. When I read those studies referenced earlier, I honestly wasn't surprised. I can go through my phone and tick off the guys who are struggling, and that's most of them. And I do see why. They don't understand the rules. They no longer know how to play the game well. This is why the manosphere exists. There is a vast market for people who take it upon themselves to tell men, this is how you play the game. This is how you win at life. If you watch Barbie and observe stereotypical Ken's experience, in my opinion, it's a sympathetic take. He's trying to figure himself out as an entity separate from Barbie, much like a lot of men who are trying to navigate this world where their roles or functions, especially in relation to women, are no longer clear. Even when Ken is framed as villainous, I personally felt a great deal of sympathy and empathy for him because figuring yourself out is hard. Feeling taken for granted is hard. Trying to get someone to take you seriously is hard. Most women know this. It isn't man hating to portray the fact that men are now experiencing that. In fact, if I were a man, I'd feel very seen. So, I'm not a student of art in the sense that I can enumerate all major movements over the last 1,000 years, or that I can identify whose work I'm looking at when I'm presented with a certain piece. I do like a few styles and can appreciate most movements. You can take me to an art gallery and I'll probably have a good time, even without alcohol, and I won't roll my eyes at any pretentious puffery. I'm a late lover of the Cubist movement, and by that I mean I only understood what was appealing about Picasso in my late 20s, when I took the time to really look into his work and the work of his contemporaries. So if you've looked at Picasso or Georges Braque and studied their paintings and found something to like in them, that's kind of how I feel about this year's Barbie. For me, it looks a mess, and if you focus on any one part, it kind of looks messed up. But zoom out and look at the general shape of objects, the play of colors, and you'll see beauty. That's what I feel about Barbie, and why I think this movie worked. It is more than the sum of its parts. If you zoom out and take it as a whole, instead of nitpicking certain segments, you'll get a sense of what the artist was trying to convey. What's clear, at least to me, as to its message, as to the substance of what the film was trying to convey, it's that feminism isn't a unified, coherent movement. If you zoom into any of the many battles of the current culture wars, you'll see all the splinters in this movement. But the bare bones of it, equality, freedom from oppression on the basis of sex, being defined by more than your genitals, not choosing to define who you are in relation to or opposition to men, you know that's in there. Barbie hasn't figured it out. Even in Barbie Land, the Barbies conclude at the end of the film that their former system of women on top, no exceptions, is wrong. There are contradictions in the film, much like there are contradicting strands of feminism in real life. The hot one now is genitals defining you versus being more than your genitals, which is a whole other video. I don't think Barbie was meant to fix any of that or to present a unified theory. It was just meant to appreciate what feminism as a movement is all about, to appreciate the fact that it exists. As I said at the start of this video, it's Barbie. What were our expectations really? Hi guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is what I decided to open with because I think it's pretty light and very fun, and it was a chance to discuss something that's been eating at me for a while, to wit the fact that in the year of our Lord 2023, there is still this surging trend in men's rights activism that is as misguided as feminism that incorporates misandry. A lot of people freaked out about this movie, which I think they should not have if they were intellectually honest. But at the same time, a lot of people like this movie, and it gives me hope that the proclivity towards reactionary backlash is on its way out. Anyway, I hope you had fun, and I hope you'll be back. Until next time, bye, kid. I wanna push you around. Well, I will. Well, I will. I wanna push you down. Well, I will, well, I will. I wanna take you for granted. Oh my God, I laughed so hard when I heard him sing that. Anyway, this is not a singing channel, if that isn't clear.